Welcome to Fossils and Fiction, a podcast exploring cultural and scientific ideas about dinosaurs. My guest on this episode is Dr. Ross Garner, a lecturer in Media and Cultural Studies in the School of Journalism, Media and Culture at Cardiff University in the United Kingdom. Ross has expertise on media tourism and dinosaur fandom. He joins me for a fascinating discussion about Jurassic Park and a number of other topics. Dr. Ross Garner, welcome to Fossils and Fiction.
Thank you, Travis. Lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
No problem at all. I really wanted to talk to you because I've seen about some of your work on Jurassic Park, on films, on dinosaur fandoms, and so ahead of Jurassic World Dominion, I thought we could have a bit of a chat about the impact of Jurassic Park on film, the legacy of Jurassic Park. So I know you're a researcher interested in dinosaur fandom. Could you tell me about that idea?
Yeah, it's something that has just been playing around in the back of my mind for a few years now. It came out of a conversation that I had with some colleagues at a conference once when we were talking about areas of studying kind of audiences and fandom and audience consumption of media and areas that were overlooked. And I've always had an interest in prehistoric, in dinosaurs, natural history, since I was a young kid, part of which dates back to Jurassic Park. And so that then, the term kind of dinosaur fandom, just kind of started kicking around in my head. And the more I started thinking about it, the more there seemed to be some traction within it as well, and that there didn't really seem to be very much work in terms of like audience and fan consumption habits that paid attention to areas of what are kind of like factual fan objects. You know, there's a lot of work around fictional franchises and the way that audiences move across those, and various other kind of aspects of commercial popular culture. But in terms of areas like more factual things, or things like dinosaurs that cross over between various forms of media and into other areas of culture like museums, there didn't really seem to be much research. So my interest in dinosaur fandom is looking at it in terms of cross-generational appeal, because dinosaurs obviously remain objects of fascination to kids, but that also does extend into adults as well, and later periods of people's lives, albeit with certain stigmas attached to it that, you know, tend to come around fandom as well, in terms of things like stunted growth and haven't you kind of got over dinosaurs yet, you know, if you're 20, 30, 40 and beyond. But it's also kind of allowing me to kind of cast a much bigger net in terms of looking at where examples of dinosaur fandom come out. So, you know, rather than it just being linked to media consumption, you also look at things, and I've done some research into how audiences consume natural history exhibits. We had the Big Dippy on tour exhibit, which was the famous skeleton cast from the Natural History Museum that's usually in the main foyer there. It toured around the UK, went to a number of cities, including coming to Cardiff, and I spent some time at the museum looking at how visitors to that attraction specifically interacted with it, what they did whilst they were there, and how we could possibly see aspects of dinosaur fandom manifest themselves within those kind of museum spaces.
I think that's really interesting because you've got multiple touch points outside of films, right? As you say, outside of fiction, the things that everybody think about Jurassic Park, of course, these touch points, which are cultural institutions where people can access dinosaurs. And they're kind of attached to the idea of dinosaurs, or perhaps particular dinosaurs. And they enact that fandom in sites that maybe fan researchers don't often look at.
Yeah. Or they certainly kind of mutate and enhance areas that fans have looked at. So one of the things that I'm really interested in is kind of the spaces of audience consumption, and doing the dinosaur fandom research allows you to look at things like museums, which don't typically get spoken about unless, again, it's museum exhibits linked to particular intellectual properties like Star Trek, and its links to science, or there's a new Doctor Who museum, which is about Doctor Who and science, which is opened in Liverpool in the UK. So it allows us to think about those, and I'm really interested as well about looking at some of the other kind of experiences that are on offer. Like in Denver, you can go and do a day's dinosaur digging. Basically, it's like a tourist attraction that you'll get picked up from your hotel and taken to a dig site, and you can kind of help out for the day, actually kind of being a paleontologist, which I think is a wonderful thing. I'm really interested to get to know more about that as something that it's not there in terms of like traditional media fandom.
I interviewed a staff member from the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum in Winton, Queensland, and they have a similar program, although I think you go for a full week, but you go out onto a dig site, you pay, but you go out and do the work of a paleontologist, and effectively they get people who just come out and do this as kind of their holiday for the year. So it's a really interesting thought about these spaces of non-traditional fandom. And I guess you've also got touch points like toys and things as well. Kids grow up with these physical objects, which again we might not often associate with fandom.
Yeah. I mean, fandom is there's been a long history of fandom and collector cultures that go around that, and certainly dinosaurs feed into that. But what's kind of interesting especially about a franchise like Jurassic Park, is how that's adapted to the demands of kind of toys and merchandising from there. Because I remember, just from a kind of personal anecdote, but it's amazing how this kind of resonates with other fans that I've spoken to. When the first Jurassic Park came out in 93, of course there was the merchandise and there were toys, including model dinosaurs in the film that were there, but I was round about the age when it was like, oh come on, you shouldn't really be playing with toys or buying toys anymore. And also my parents objected to buying these Jurassic Park toys, because basically they were toy dinosaurs, and you could pick up a toy dinosaur for a very inexpensive amount, just a plastic dinosaur somewhere else, whereas the Jurassic Park ones were selling at much more inflated price points that were there. And the reason that they were doing that was they had the little JP93 logo on them, so they were branded as Jurassic Park dinosaurs rather than generic dinosaurs that you could get in a toy shop for a few, I would say, pounds. Back in the early 90s, I think that was still the case. And it's interesting how, as Jurassic Park as a franchise has progressed, it has it's necessitated differentiating itself by including these increasingly branded dinosaurs that mean the parents aren't just buying, or collectors aren't just buying their generic replications dinosaurs in branded packaging. Things like Blue as this kind of almost celebrity velociraptor that's is a completely unique intellectual property that can be copyrighted, and parents aren't just buying a generic velociraptor, the kids want Blue specifically of it. And you see that with the increasingly kind of mad science ones in Jurassic World, like the Indominus Rex and the Indoraptor, and I shuddering a little bit about whatever the Atrociraptor is in Dominion, because it seems to be again this kind of like mad science, genetic engineering aspect to it. But you really do see this kind of like branding of specific dinosaurs, or dinosaurs as almost celebrities in the case of Blue, that are brought in.
I think that's really right, because you look at the first Jurassic Park, and although it had sort of iconic dinosaurs, the Dilophosaurus, the Velociraptor, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It was left to fans to come up with a name for those dinosaurs, right? And so then the Rex became Rexy. But by the time you get to Jurassic World, you get, as you say, Blue. You get this named dinosaur that everybody can grab hold of, and you get the Indominus Rex, which is a dinosaur that nobody's got on the shelf except Jurassic World as a brand. And then the Indoraptor in Fallen Kingdom as well. I think that's really interesting. And of course, Camp Cretaceous, it's taken that to the nth degree with by naming more and more of the dinosaurs. You've got Bumpy the Blue Ankylosaurus, right? Yeah. You've got Pierce the Kentrosaurus, and they're all named. They're all given these names and these personifications, so they become characters, which really feeds into that marketization of the films, I guess, even more so than ever before.
Yeah, and I mean, Bumpy's a really good example of this kind of turn towards cuteness that Star Wars has, absolutely mastered with the kind of Baby Yoda thing. The idea about kind of opening up the appeal of the franchise through having this kind of like hyper cute character that sells to children, but also kind of extends beyond to kind of like more feminized tastes as well. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to do this with Blue's baby within Dominion as well. It seems to be very much. I have to say, I was in a Lego store the other day, and one of the sets I just had to buy was Blue and Beta. in Lego. So that's how it is. It absolutely works. I want to circle back just briefly to museums. You were talking about museums and their sort of strategies for audience engagement, but you were looking at that. How are people engaging with the museum? How does the museum engage with people? How do they do audience development? Do you think they focus on that in the same way that we might think about it for media properties usually, or do they do something different? It depends. I think museums could do a lot more in terms of kind of recognizing audience enthusiasms towards dinosaurs. I think museums do a lot of work in terms of, or just expect that the skeletons themselves are spectacular enough to warrant interest from people, and I think there's also something about the type of gazing that museums encourage. They encourage a more kind of scientific gaze towards things, that you have the kind of cool detached appreciation from things, and you inspect the specimen at your own pace, whether that's just looking at it for a period of time, or whether it's kind of touring around, taking photos of things from different angles, different aspects of the physiology of the specimen that's there. But I do an interesting example. I've been to the Field Museum in Chicago, where Sue, the big T-Rex skeleton, is held, and that's a really interesting example of, I think, how you can start to maybe build in different approaches to things. I mean, Sue itself is another example of these kind of branded dinosaurs, celebrity dinosaurs that you get nowadays. And the lanyard I'm wearing is kind of got kind of Sue's logo on it and everything. But that Sue is completely bracketed off from the other exhibits within the kind of natural history area, and the other kind of dinosaur fossils and skeletons that are there, and you walk through it in a way that suggests you are moving into a different space, but also it's kind of constructed as though you're moving back in time to encounter Sue within their natural habitat, and it's very important you use they, because that's their pronoun, as they say on Twitter. I was going to mention the Twitter account. I was going to say Sue has a Twitter account.
Is that account run by the museum, or is that a sort of fan-run account? Do you know?
No. I from what I gather, it's all completely done by the museum, because
it's got a really distinctive voice for a museum Twitter account. Then,
yes, it's very outspoken about a variety of things, and it does treat Sue as though Sue is an alive dinosaur nowadays that's negotiating some of the other bits and bobs and issues that face us, especially things related to kind of climate change and things like that, which in some ways is unsurprising, given there's some arguments that are out there that dinosaurs culturally appeal because they were these huge creatures that became extinct, and in comparison, humanity is now the kind of equivalent dominant species on the planet and has managed to survive, albeit whether that's the case moving forward, we shall see over the next few years. So yeah, but going back to the Twitter account of Sue, yes, it's fascinating the way it's run and the way it works to kind of develop this particular brand that they have of Sue and this personality that they attach to Sue, about, they have favorite things in the world, which are ham and Jeff Goldblum, for example. And yeah, very, very fascinating.
I've just gone to this Twitter account, which I already, of course, follow, but the top account is the top tweet is at the moment, every bisexual person has one of these 4 outfits in their weekly rotation, and it's an image of Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and the kids from Jurassic Park. But again, that language is really extraordinary. And you're right, I think it is run by the Field Museum, because they have a blog which refers back to the Twitter accounts. So there you go.
Yes.
I'm going to have to get that social media person on maybe for an interview at some point.
That'd be fascinating. Yeah. I would love to speak to them myself. So yeah, if you do manage that, that'd be a fantastic.
I wonder if I'll be talking to Sue the T-Rex or the such and such social media manager. We'll see.
Oh, if they could do it in character, then that would be even better.
I'll have to put a voice filter or something on. I didn't expect to be chatting about Sue in a sort of interview that I billed as discussing the legacy of Jurassic Park, but here we are. Media researchers, we can go anywhere. Absolutely.
absolutely. And I mean, taking things back to Jurassic Park, I mean, Sue is absolutely indicative of the popularity of the T-Rex. Exactly. And T-Rex remain, or Rexy as you rightly name them, it has been the star of Jurassic Park for a number of ways. And some of the research that I've done into fans of Jurassic Park, the T-Rex always comes out as the favorite dinosaur that's there for a variety of reasons. That it's never really the antagonist or just the antagonist. In some ways it comes to save the pseudo family at the end of the first Jurassic Park. I love the end of Jurassic World where it kind of goes out onto the helipad and roars, and the connotations of this is my kingdom now.
and even at the end of Fallen Kingdom, it walks up onto a kind of rock at a city zoo and roars at a lion, which is, it's the paleontologists, I'm sure, shake their head at that kind of roaring and that kind of display, but it's become such an iconic part of the film, or part of that film franchise.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the fans say, it's there in the logo for it. The T-Rex is kind of, in some ways, the unofficial mascot of the Jurassic Park franchise and has been positioned that way from the start. And so, yeah.
We'll have to see what happens to Rexy in Dominion. You've also taken a look at the relationship between Doctor Who and the Mesozoic in some of your work. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's a chapter that is in an edited collection called Doctor Who and Science. Just to give it a brief plug, it's a very good collection.
Just to stay on the dinosaur, I'd talk about Doctor Who, but we should stay on the dinosaur topic is all. So.
Yeah, but it looks at the way that dinosaurs have been used within TV Doctor Who, and it casts a broad focus. The chapter it looks at both kind of what's referred to as classic Who, so between 63 and 89, and then kind of new Who as well since it came back in 2005, and it looks at the way that dinosaurs, considering them as kind of like giant lizards, came through. So it's not looking at kind of like the more kind of humanoid Mesozoic monsters like the Silurians specifically. It's looking at when dinosaurs specifically pop up, or things that might be viewed as kind of like connotative dinosaurs as well. So there's a creature called the Merca in one serial. There's another one called the Scaracin, which is equivalent to the Loch Ness Monster in another one, which is a cyborg. But I include them in the sample as well to kind of look at what the way in which dinosaurs as giant lizards have been portrayed. And it's interesting because it means looking at some stories, and certainly some elements of stories from the past, which are less revered by fan canons. The dinosaurs in Doctor Who, they're very much kind of televisual rather than film, so they're perhaps less successful in terms of their realization. There was an ambitious story in the 1970s called Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which featured some puppet dinosaurs, claymation dinosaurs that are perhaps less than successful on the budget of 1970s BBC TV. I don't know if anybody, if in the US, in Australia, you got the Chewits campaign that featured like a plastic dinosaur. It was like a plastic version of Godzilla going on the rampage.
It doesn't ring a bell, but I'll have to have a look.
But it's kind of that standard. So it's allowing us to kind of reevaluate some of the less revered instances of special effects in Doctor Who. But one of the arguments I put through there is that actually there's a number of different codings or genre codings of dinosaurs that take place within the show. Yes, they're used as examples of monstrosity and threats that need to be dealt with in some way, shape or form. But there's also quite an emphasis on melodrama in relation to them. The dinosaurs are used as kind of, in some ways, quite pitiful objects as well, and things that should be expressed sympathy towards, as well as kind of monstrosity. And a lot of that comes as a result of the figure of the Doctor being a kind of an alien or an outsider, and this kind of complicates some of the ideas that we have about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are frequently used in narratives as threats that allow humanity to kind of demonstrate its superiority to previous alpha species on Earth. I always find this is quite a controversial argument to make, because I remember seeing something recently where there were kind of right-wing conservatives saying that, dinosaurs appeal because they're not political. And it's like, yeah, they are. They are used for inherently political purposes.
They have a cultural role, of course it's political. Yeah.
Yes. So dinosaurs are often used as these kind of threats of these giant creatures that once were the dominant species on Earth, but humanity kind of demonstrates its superiority and its rightfulness or rightful nature as the current dominant species on the planet by overcoming the re-emergence of dinosaurs. But Doctor Who complicates that, because the Doctor's this kind of alien outsider figure who often sympathizes as much with the dinosaurs and doesn't think they should be completely eradicated or destroyed or overcome. He's much more that if you can send them back to their own time, then that should be the case, or if that's not the case, they have a right to live and exist a peaceful existence as much as humanity does. So they're used for these kind of melodramatic purposes, and to make those particular points within the show. And then as we get into the new series, we get another coding of the dinosaur where they're used much more as spectacle. They are set up as kind of spectacular, albeit perhaps limited in terms of their aesthetic appearance in the classic show, but they're used very much as spectacle and for publicity reasons in the new series. That can be in terms of like high concept naming of episodes. So there was one called Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, which was blatantly using that kind of hook to immediately get people in, when actually the story was about something a little bit different. Or what was it, when Peter Capaldi's Doctor launched, there was frequently used in trailers and press images a giant T-Rex rampaging through Victorian London, which plays on the kind of anachronistic nature that Doctor Who likes to use. but this was, set up as what the first episode was going to be, when actually the T-Rex was seen in the kind of teaser sequence before the titles, and that was about it, really. You heard it in the background a couple of times, and then it disappears without providing any spoilers for anybody who might want to go and watch that. So Doctor Who New Who has certainly used dinosaurs much more for examples of kind of spectacle and publicity, as well as some of those other things like melodrama. There's quite a strong emphasis in the dinosaurs on a spaceship one about certain dinosaurs being kind of victims and that they need to be protected by humanity and as pets, basically, which is quite a common coding that you get of dinosaurs in pop culture as well.
Even circling back to Jurassic Park, throughout the series we've seen a lot of those same themes circling around. Fallen Kingdom was all about this sort of debate about should we save the dinosaurs from the volcano or shall we let them die? And now in Dominion they're out in the world and they're kind of everywhere. That question of will humanity sort of reassert itself as the dominant species on the planet? Or will we, as Jeff Goldblum sort of intones in the in some of the trailers, will we? I think he says we're not only subservient to nature or something, but we might actually go extinct here. So I can't replicate that as well as Goldblum. We not only lack dominion over nature, we're subservient to it, is what he says.
Yes, yes, in that irrepressible form that Jeff Goldblum can deliver those kind of lines.
And I was thinking as you were talking earlier about Jurassic Park toys, just to circle back again, you were talking about Jurassic Park toys, and there's a great line where Goldblum foreshadows exactly that thing occurring in Jurassic Park when he says, you patented it and you slap your label on it and you put it out there in the world before you even thought about what you've done.
Yes. Yeah. You stuck it on a lunchbox.
Yeah, and he bangs the desk in a very sort of angry way. He gets very enthusiastic about delivering the point.
Yeah, and that does allude to again, circling back to some of those things about the impact of Jurassic Park and maybe why it's endured where other kind of dinosaur movies haven't done it. It's always had within it that more intellectual, philosophical set of debates around the kind of ethics of science and cloning that's there about, I think, to paraphrase Goldman, just because you could do it doesn't mean you should. And I think that's one of the kind of strengths of Jurassic Park, and again this has come through in some of the fan survey research that I've done, is that those, as people get older, those are the elements that kind of resonate with them. Yes, obviously the kind of spectacular of the dinosaurs and seeing people get eaten provide ongoing pleasures, if that's the right word, in terms of things, but certainly that more philosophical dimension about, well, should we be bringing these creatures back? Do we have a responsibility to look after them? And what controls do there need to be on science? And that's not with falling into the kind of anti-science brigade that's there. Although I dare say some of those people will use that as an example of that to support their particular positions. But certainly that idea about kind of questioning and holding progress to account, and which I think in some ways is lost a little bit in some of the Jurassic World movies, where it's become just a bit more. I mean, what's it? The example I've used before is a bit like the genetic engineering in South Park, where it's, oh look, we've spliced together this and this, and we've made this, and wow.
Yeah, there was a recent article about a very serious attempt to revive an Australian animal, the thylacine, or the Tasmanian tiger. Which is sort of underway, and even within the article, which I think was in the Washington Post, I'll link to it in the show notes, there was the scientist said, look, everyone asks us about Jurassic Park, and then I went and found the thing on Twitter, the article, to retweet it, and like every second reply was like, haven't we always already realized this was a bad idea? And there were gifts from Jurassic Park and this and that and everything else. And it's like, we're talking about real science here, of an animal that went extinct barely 100 years ago, or not even at this point, and went extinct largely, at human hands. We're not talking about dinosaurs, but the pop culture has overtaken the real science in a sense.
Yeah, definitely, and it's interesting that Jurassic Park continues to provide that touch point for people's immediate understanding of the ways to deal with it, because I think, some of the questions that Jurassic Park does ask about, the potential of bringing back something from fossilized DNA. Well, what might that also bring back in terms of, I don't know, diseases, or in terms of introducing a new species into a vastly different ecosystem and habitat that in comparison to when it originally existed. Yeah, there are those very, very deep questions that need to be thought about, and how, if this is even successful and possible, would it be handled, quite frankly. And then again, for what purposes are you bringing this back? You bring it back to be a tourist example, or a commodity that basically allows people to come and see it and to marvel at your scientific achievement, or are you bringing it back for other purposes, to be set out in the wild and possibly breed again? And as with Jurassic World, really, what might be some of the consequences of that happening? There's
science fiction, has a really great pedigree of guiding society to think about questions that perhaps we're not ready to think about, but actually we should be addressing in serious ways. And I think Crichton in particular was really well equipped. He was really well practiced at asking those questions throughout a lot of his work, and that was very strong in Jurassic Park. And Ian Malcolm really was his voice for asking those questions in Jurassic Park. He was the character that was sort of put into the park for the precise purpose of asking, should we be doing this?
Yes. Yeah, and it's easy to lose sight of that with Malcolm's character, because circling back again to kind of like the enduring impact of the show, of the movie, sorry. One of the reasons why Jurassic Park continues to endure is the memes and the GIFs that are there, many of which that focus around Ian Malcolm, whether that's, Goldblum being shirtless, or some of the other lines of dialogue that he produces that are there. But you strip away the Ian Malcolm character from Jeff Goldblum, the kind of star persona, and you're absolutely right. It's there as this kind of voice of reason. He's set up as this kind of like crazy rock star chaotician, which in 1993 nobody had ever really heard of, or anything. Was that a profession that anybody could go down? But actually, it's very, very serious questions that are asked there, and they're introduced by him and supported by the other more recognizable scientist characters that are in the movie. And that's the enduring appeal of Goldblum's character. One thing we haven't touched upon, which I think also contributes to the movie's or the franchise's enduring impact, is Laura Dern's Ellie Sattler character. I sometimes worry about overstating and making these kind of generalized things, but the fact that the character is not just the love interest, or is never really the damsel in distress. Well, in fact, quite the opposite.
The love interest aspect of her role, it's in the background. It's just part of her character. It's not central to the story. Which I think is actually really important, because often female characters are there just as the love interest, but she's not. She's there for entirely legitimate reasons, and she's the first one to stick her hands in the dinosaur poop, right? She volunteers to go out after Arnold in the raptor shed, and there's that great line where Hammond tries to say, oh no, I should go because I'm a he goes to say man and you're a woman, and she's like, look, we can discuss sexism in survival situations when I get back. She just is not going to take that nonsense, right? Ellie is like, no, bitch, I am not taking this. Do not give me this right now. Like, people are dying.
Absolutely, and it's sad that gets kind of overlooked because, that kind of character type that, if you want to use the term, the strong female heroine, but the character, Ripley in Alien and Sarah Connor in the Terminator series were immediate touch points with that. But especially at the time in blockbuster cinema of the early 90s, and I might be wrong, but I'm happy to be corrected about it, but I don't really think there was another character like Ellie Sattler. No. And after that as well, if you look at some of the blockbusters of the mid to late 90s, that character type wasn't reproduced in the way, or I might well be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected about it.
It was only reproduced in Jurassic Park. So there was Ellie, and then you got the follow-up of Sarah Harding in The Lost World, and she was equally as competent, equally as strong. And I wrote a blog post recently, which is on the Fossils and Fiction website, where I argued that actually the makers of The Lost World did her a disservice, because while Ellie really came to the fore in Jurassic Park, the film, in the Lost World book, Crichton actually packed Sarah Harding with so many badass skills, and she was just she was riding a motorbike chasing down this velociraptor and instructing Kelly, Malcolm's daughter, how to shoot the raptor at the same time. During the T-Rex attack on the trailer, Malcolm was totally comatose, like he was done for, and she climbed up the trailer carrying him, up the outside of the trailer carrying him, rather than that sort of dramatic scene you get where the trailer falls down around them in the film. She actually climbed this thing. It was in the book she was so strong and so powerful. I actually think, all credit to Julianne Moore, she played Harding fantastically, but the film Harding was nothing like the book Harding. She was not on the same level. So, and I had another piece here to keep harping my own chain. Harping my own chain, that's not a word. A phrase. It's too late at night. I had another piece published in The Conversation today as we're recording this, talking about the strength of Claire Dearing as a character as well. She was really heavily criticised for the heels and the costuming and everything else, but over the course of that film, she took charge. She was in charge of the park, second basically only to Masrani, and once he crashed his helicopter, she took charge, and even right at the end, she said to Larry, "Let the T-Rex out. I've got a plan here. Let the T-Rex out." And that was what finished off the Indominus. That was a boss move.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and as well, I think Fallen Kingdom tried to do a lot to kind of reclaim Claire, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if Dominion also continues down that line. In Dominion, in the trailers that we've seen so far, she is the most sort of under threat, I noticed, in writing this conversation piece. There are 3 scenes in that first trailer where Claire is face to face with a dinosaur. She's face to face with an Atrociraptor. She's face to face with a Dilophosaurus, quite literally. In the case of the Dilophosaurus, and then she's sort of crawling through the swamp to get away from the Therizinosaurus. She's actually right there amongst the action, and it's a pretty extraordinary continuation of these really badass female characters, I think. And then we get Kayla Watts, who's this like wild pilot. So you can tell I'm excited for this film. yeah. And it's nice to also, it'd be nice to see, how was it, the Zia Holland character back as well. Hopefully in a bit more of an elevated role rather than just a kind of traditional feminized caring role.
Yeah, she's been kept out a little bit. Zia, the veterinarian, is that who you're referring to? Yeah. Daniela Pineda.
That's it.
Actress. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Zia, came to the fore in sort of caring for a T-Rex, right? After a T-Rex as a vet. Vet to a T-Rex is an extraordinary profession as well. So. Jurassic, it has a lot to say about all of these social issues, I think, and it does it really well. So
it does, yeah. I mean, that's another thing as well about the impact and the endurance of the first film, especially, is that it's a really good film. I mean, good is a loaded term in a variety of ways, but it holds up, and it continues to hold up in a variety of different ways. It doesn't feel like a movie that came out almost 30 years ago. There's still as resonant today, or I would certainly say it's still as resonant today in terms of some of the themes that it deals with, as it was when it came out in 1993. And for something that was written off as like a kind of popcorn blockbuster theme park ride of a movie, well, I think those people should go away and reevaluate what they said about it then, because yeah, it is, for me, it is a masterpiece, and it is one of the greatest films of the last 30 years, possibly, probably even more than that, probably even ever, I would say. So yeah,
I almost just want to end it there, but I want to give you an opportunity to have a chat about your new book, which is coming soon, I believe. You have an edited book coming out?
Yeah, it's not mine. I'm not the editor of it. It's been edited by a guy called Matt Melia, who is a academic at Kingston University in the UK, and so I've got a chapter within it which is about it's called Jurassic Park and / as dinosaur fandom, and it certainly a lot of the comments and observations that I've kind of referenced throughout this podcast are alluded to in there as well. It starts off from trying to explore, how significant dinosaurs are to people who identify as Jurassic Park fans. But it also just tries to do some kind of basic groundwork about it, because in comparison to the other big, high-profile, high box office, franchises like Star Wars, Star Trek, Harry Potter, there's not really, or there's comparatively less work, if any, about Jurassic Park fans. So it starts off by doing it's based around survey responses, and it identifies some of the kind of demographic issues around who we are Jurassic Park fans, identifying that, they're predominantly white, predominantly Western in the sample that I constructed. But one of the interesting things about it is that there's just as many female Jurassic Park fans as there are male, which is quite a different assumption to a lot of the literature, or a lot of the assumptions that are made about people who are adults and are dinosaur fans, in that it's very much associated with stereotypes of stunted male masculinity and growth, and haven't you kind of grown up out of this? But yeah, there's equally as many female fans as male fans to Jurassic Park, and there's certainly equally, when people were asked to list the aspects of the franchise that they enjoyed, there were as many female respondents who said, or women who said, dinosaurs were of interest to them as there were men. And that's before, getting into some of the deeper findings of the chapter, where we find out that, the way the dinosaurs all the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park become locuses for people's ongoing attachments to Jurassic Park, their emotional attachments to it, and some of the feelings that the dinosaurs can inspire, nostalgia being one of those things, but not necessarily nostalgia for the Mesozoic period, which nobody lived in, or nostalgia for dinosaurs, which are, not necessarily kind of big, cute creatures and objects of nostalgia that we might traditionally associate with. But a lot of the time it's nostalgia for the memories and the identities of the people that they were at that particular time, or when they first watched the movies. And yeah. Cool.
I'll look forward to the chapter, and let us know when it's out, and I'll make sure we share it on the Fossils and Fiction socials as well. So,
thank you. Yeah, I will do.
Dr. Ross Garner, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. If people want to look you up on Twitter or look up your work anywhere and find out more, where can they do that?
My Twitter handle is at Dr. RPG _TV. You can find me there. My website is if you Google Ross Garner Cardiff, the departmental website page for me will come up, and you can find a list of publications that are there. My email address is garnerrp1@cardiff.ac.uk. So if anybody would like to drop me an email, I'll be happy to chat with you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Ross Garner from Cardiff University for that fantastic discussion. If you'd like to be included in a future episode of Fossils and Fiction, you can send a voice file to us via our Anchor profile, or simply send us a link to your recorded voice message via any of the social media channels. If you'd like to guest star or interview on one of the episodes, simply get in touch via social media. Thank you for listening to the Fossils and Fiction podcast, produced by me, Travis Holland, with the support of Charles Sturt University. The podcast theme music is Sonora by Quincas Morea via the YouTube audio library. Find more content on our social media channels: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Show notes are available on the website fossilsfiction.co. You can subscribe to the podcast on all major podcasting platforms.